Future Commerce is brought to you by Octane AI. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to leverage more customer data and increase your revenue at your brand? The answer should be yes and yes. And with Octane AI, every Shopify and Shopify Plus merchant can do just that. Learn about your customers and collect buyer profile data with engaging quizzes and create personalized campaigns and flows using Facebook Messenger and SMS. Octane AI has plans for any size business, and Future Commerce listeners get 10% off your first 6 months. So go sign up right now at octaneai.com/future. That's octaneai.com/future.
Hello, and welcome to Future Commerce, the podcast about next generation commerce. I'm Brian,
That's
and I've got
one.
a couple of amazing people here also with me.
Do the
like
intro.
Philip.
Yeah, no, nobody
Like
cares
Philip.
about me. Kiri Masters is here.
Kiri Masters! What's up,
Hello.
Kiri? Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome back
what's
again.
up besides the daggy glasses? Do you guys know what daggy means?
No, but
No
please
idea.
explain. Is that like Dagwood
All right, so-
from the like Archie comics?
I wish. So it's an Australianism. If you're a dag, then you're a bit of a, I don't know, not very groovy, like a little bit behind the times, bit of a dag. And what it actually means is it's the part of the sheep where the sheep's bottom meets the tail that gets all poopy.
Oh, wow.
And what they cut off ultimately. So that's what a dag is. And I've got the daggy glasses, and you guys know just a little bit more about Australia now.
it's
And that's
more
a
than
little
we ever
slice of
wanted
Australian culture.
to know. Kiri, if you want to be on the show more frequently, you don't have to write a book. You could just you could just ask. Kiri's written a new
It'll
book.
make it so much easier.
Last time it would be a shorter path. Just send us a message. Just kidding. We had you on the show last about this time last year, maybe sometime in late spring, where you had written co-authored a book called Amazon for CMOs, which I think is in its 5th printing. No, I don't know. It's quite well circulated, and I still see people reference it from time to time. I've recommended it to a number of folks that we work with a lot. You've written a new book about Instacart. Tell us about Instacart and or what inspired you to write another. Why would you put yourself through writing another book? I think is the first question.
So I wasn't very inventive with the title, because the previous book was Amazon for CMOs. This one's Instacart for CMOs. And so that preserved a little bit of energy into the content, I think, which is, it's an interesting topic to cover, because nothing had really been, not nothing, but there wasn't as much written about Instacart as there was about other retail marketplaces. And there's a huge thirst for information from brands, because it was certainly in 2020, the shiny new penny to spend your ad dollars on their retail media platform. It was generating great ROI, just a real hot commodity with the pandemic and people purchasing at home. So there was a lot of interest and not a lot of really credible, actionable information about what do you do with this platform to optimize the ads, to optimize conversion. And so my co-author, Stefan Jordev, and I decided to put together the first and foremost guide on it. And
it's from what I understand, haven't read the book, full disclosure, but it's a comprehensive guide of how to approach Instacart, how to understand it for your business, specifically if you are a chief marketing officer. What are some, just right up off the top, are there some misconceptions about what Instacart is, or how it's kind of lumped in with other delivery apps? Is it just a delivery app? Is that what Instacart is, and why not, DoorDash for CMOs?
That's a good question. It's interesting. it doesn't quite fit the definition of a delivery app, and it doesn't quite fit the definition of a marketplace as the way that we know it. And I'll take it from the perspective of retail marketplaces, which is my background. Amazon, Walmart, those platforms are bringing two parties together for a transaction. In the case of those two entities, they also have a retail business where they're selling, acquiring goods wholesale as well. So there's a little bit more nuance to it than that. But ultimately, it's a two-sided marketplace. Instacart has a four-sided marketplace because they have the retailer who is actually accountable for the inventory, pricing, content. They have the in-store shopper, which is the gig worker picking up the delivery, the customer, and also brands who advertise on that platform. But the brands don't really have any control over inventory, pricing, product content, and availability across geographies. So it's different to other online retail marketplaces from that perspective that it's four-sided. It's also a little different to the delivery apps in that I think that they're in a couple of different ways. One is how Instacart has really partnered with the major retailers. They've got a lot of cut through. They actually reach through their retail partners, reach 80% of the US population, 70% of the Canadian population. So that sets them ahead of other delivery partners, and just the extent of their relationships that they partner with. I think at last count, 8 of the top 10 retailers in the US across increasingly not just grocery, but Walgreens, CVS, Sephora, Best Buy, getting into all different types of verticals as well. So from that perspective, they are a demand aggregator and a destination for people who are shopping across every category, not just grocery, but you're getting ready to jump on Zoom and you don't have all the makeup that you need. You can jump on and get what you need from Walgreens or Sephora, and that's become a central buying activity. So that's how I see them as different from both the delivery platforms and other marketplaces.
It's pretty unique. And with that comes a lot of complexity. I feel like everything you're saying is like, whoa, this is like Instacart is a complex business. And like there's been a lot of chatter about how, should retailers watch out for Instacart? Like, is this a threat to their business, friend or foe? And yet you get into some of this and you're like, wait a minute, like actually this is really, really complicated. And like, I think I err on the side of this is a friend, because figuring this out for like a retailer to go do this on their own is going to take so much work and so much investment. That I think the only faux side of things that I see here is not investing in it now as a business. It's not so much that like Instacart's a threat, because right now it's giving you access to something that would take a lot of work to get on your own.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, and you wouldn't even get all the benefits, because Instacart gives people access. Like you said, it's a marketplace. It gives people access to things, or it's a channel that they wouldn't necessarily have thought to use your particular, you as a retailer before. So it's like, I see a lot of benefits and a lot of like upside with Instacart. The only downside is not investing in your own version of this or your own infrastructure, because it's going to be necessary for the future.
There's something we talked about, Brian. I'm curious what you think about this, Kiri, is the direct-to-consumerization of last mile, I think, is something we might see play out in the next few years, where more and more margin is being let go, and obviously customer price tolerances are being challenged here by all these delivery fees, and a lot of these delivery apps. I mean, Instacart might be just something different. Again, I'd love you to educate me here, but there might be a greater opportunity long term, at least for grocery, to build this capability in first party in house. But yeah, Kiri, tell us a little bit about that.
They're trying. So the biggest grocer in the US, Kroger, has been, I think, it's a few years ago that they first set out on their journey to build customer fulfillment centers dedicated to e-commerce fulfillment, and that was in partnership with Ocado. And so that they're a few years in, 10 sites identified, haven't finished their first site. And I don't think there's a recent sort of public news on this, but I believe it's not, it's over time and over budget. So that's Kroger, who has the most resources out of anyone to get there, and they're still need to rely on Instacart for a lot of that demand and a lot of the technology. And what is, not sure if you've seen these charts from, I think both Bain and McKinsey actually did similar kind of analysis, but the profitability of various fulfillment methods in grocery, from a customer going to a store and picking their own basket to the grocer picking a basket and the customer doing click and collect, to a third party doing the picking and in-home delivery. And there's negligible profits to go around in any scenario in grocery, but particularly grocers picking and delivering is unprofitable. So the way that Instacart is actually, their business model really works is by improving order density and making sure that they have enough deliveries scheduled on their routes, potentially aggregating orders from different retailers to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze with those gig workers and setting up the infrastructure there. And that's how they've been able to expand throughout, not just the top tier cities, but secondary cities and beyond, and into much smaller geographies. So you think about, Kroger's one example, but you think about smaller regional players, or even the, specialist butchers, or, so these regional chains, they're not going to be able to aggregate enough demand or build up that route density to make it work. So one scenario I see is that Instacart has a white label platform, which they actually do already. They acquired one a few years ago. And they could, if they're not able to convince retailers to always be using their front end solution, at least have the back end solution built like a white label solution. So that's where I personally think it's going. I think there's an argument to be made to say, look, Instacart could make just as much money by becoming a retailer. And there was some news last week that indicate, they're building some fulfillment centers. But to your point, Philip, I think that there's a fulfillment as a service is a business model that Amazon's getting into. Amazon's in that business model now. And I really believe that that's where a huge dose of their future is as well. So these retailers need that infrastructure. They are quite far behind. This is a major leap forward. Yeah, you're not going to get the customer data. There's a lot of challenges with this model, but what other option do they have, really?
There's so much opportunity from a demand gen perspective of being able to they already have the audience, which I think is arguably one of the harder things to build, aside from the logistical capability and the infrastructure to be able to deliver it. Obviously, grocers are in the grocery business and not always in the innovation tech stack, logistics, and fulfillment business. So that's, I think, it stands to reason why an Instacart is better positioned for the long term. The ad network and the capability of attracting a new audience or getting your brand or your retail outfit in front of a motivated buyer. That seems like something we're all very familiar with in other modalities, right? Amazon is one. I think is that what first attracted you to take a look at Instacart in closer detail, and what are some of the similarities there, or what is some of the operational differences if you are looking to invest in Instacart as a retailer?
Yeah, so Instacart launched their self-service ad platform in Q1 or Q2 last year in 2020, and integrated with just a few ad tech partners initially, but got a lot of attention from brands because their ROI is really good back then, and it is today as well. Stefan, my co-author, and I spoke with 9 brands for this book to get their perspectives and to get industry perspectives. Companies from ranging from Revlon and Elf Cosmetics down to much smaller brands like Simple Meals and Noon Hydration, to get their perspectives on how Instacart is as a partner, what their opportunities were, and some really interesting questions around like, where does Instacart sit in your org structure? Because the sales show up with the retailer, but the activity of managing the spend on Instacart usually sits with the digital e-commerce team, which is usually under marketing. So it's like this hot potato in some ways. But anyway, all these brands that we spoke with for the book, as well as the clients that we work with at Bobsled, my agency, 10 out of 10 times, Instacart's offering the best ROI of all of their marketplaces. So that's what's drawn a lot of brands to Instacart, is the good word has gotten out there, and they're all eager to get in front of where shoppers are shopping. We want to meet them where they are. That's how forward-thinking brands are thinking about it. But the challenge is, because of the four-sided nature of the marketplace and the fact that brands don't have control over inventory, pricing, and to a great extent the product content as well, they don't have there's not so many levers that they can pull, unlike Amazon and Walmart and Target, where they can control all of those factors. Basically, that retailer sitting in the middle, sometimes that retailer is not particularly engaged with Instacart, or they're questioning, their strategic alliance. And sometimes the retailers it's not a priority. And sometimes their inventory systems just aren't equipped to have store level inventory data feeds, and the whole situation starts to crumble a little bit when a brand is relying on the retailer for so much. So it's interesting to me because Instacart could have very easily, I guess relatively speaking, given brands more of a control point around product content in particular. But for some reason that hasn't happened, and they've kept retailers at the center of that. Of that. So it might tell us something about where Instacart's loyalty is to some extent, and it makes those kind of things make me question this logic that Instacart's going to go out and become a retailer and screw over all the retailers. I just think that would be pretty antithetical to their business model so far, and imagine all the work required to get 8 of the top 10 retailers onto your platform. Just
right. And then
amazing.
to start making your own batteries in a basics line, and start backfilling all the eventually. Just give it a decade, it'll be there. Isn't that the law of platforms? That's the law of platforms as it begins to eat its own tail, and you have the That's.
Although it kind of cracks me up that's sort of scary to the Krogers and Targets of the world, since that's sort of what they did. Like.
Well, yeah, it's you try to create enough dominance that you can prevent happening to you what you did to everybody else. That's also the law of platforms, right? It's the moat. You build the moat.
Something that you said really hit hard which was the ROI portion of this. So. You said 10 out of 10 of the clients you surveyed said it was their highest ROI? Mm-hmm. Okay, unpack that a little bit. What's contributing to that? That's crazy.
Well, so just quick primer on how ad auctions work. You got a second price auction and a first price auction. So Amazon and Instacart both operate on a second price auction, which means that if you're bidding on a search term $2 and I'm bidding $1, then you're going to win that bid, but you're going to pay $1.01 because you pay basically a fraction over what the next highest bidder was. With a first price auction, which is what Walmart has, it's you bid $2, I bid $1. You win the bid at $2, you pay $2. So you're paying, it's not as good value for money. And so that's a challenge that a lot of advertisers have with Walmart in particular, is that the ROI, just by nature of the first price ad auction format, it's just more difficult to get that to be competitive. So that's one thing that sets it apart from Walmart. And then I guess that this is a somewhat of a choice that Instacart has made to be very to provide great value to advertisers, and they've done a really great job. It's been a great strategy because they've attracted a lot of ad dollars. Their CRO, Seth Dallaire, is from Amazon and has brought a lot of that, a lot of the great track record that Amazon had in becoming a retail media giant across. So Seth and his team and the whole organization, that's a huge revenue stream for them. They've really jumped on that and are throwing lots of resources at making it a really attractive place to spend ad dollars, and that the analytics are quite good. It's getting better as well. Currently it's quite simple in terms of there's only one ad campaign type. The bidding structure is pretty straightforward, but I think there'll be more coming in terms of display ad types and things like that.
Hey, Philip here to tell you about our newest sponsor, Octane AI. If you are on Shopify or Shopify Plus, and who isn't, am I right? Then you need what Octane AI has to offer. I am a huge fan of guided selling, and Octane AI has tools that allow you to get to know your customers on a deeper level and collect more buyer profile data. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you can use things like shop quizzes, Facebook Messenger, SMS, and opt-in tools to allow you to engage your customer more personally so you can get on their level. More personalized campaigns and flows across all channel means more ROI. And that ROI that is driven from Octane AI is usable in other platforms with their integrations to other tools you're already using. Brands have already seen incredible results, up to 16x increase in email signups and a 28% increase in AOV. That's average order value, money in your pocket. What are you waiting for? Octane AI has plans for any sized business. Future Commerce listeners get 20% off the first 6 months when you sign up. So why don't you sign up today? Go to octaneai.com/future. Once again, that's octaneai.com/future and tell them Philip sent you.
So just by nature of the bidding system that they picked, it's going to naturally be more effective for retailers. Of course, that means that Instacart's not making as much money as Walmart is on their auctions. Do you see this?
The other thing, sorry, just
yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
another thing that is important here is when you think about each marketplace has their own flywheel. Amazon's really famous for having its flywheel, where Prime membership helps that flywheel to accelerate. With Instacart, what's interesting is that a lot of the UI is built around repeat purchases. So if you're shopping on Instacart, then you're frequently prompted, hey, you bought this last time. Do you want to shop from your recently ordered items? And so it constantly brings people back to what they've bought before. And so as a brand, if you can kind of get in early with it in someone's cart and then ordered items, then you've got a chance of coming back into someone's cart later on, because Instacart keeps resurfacing those items to shoppers. They know that it converts. And so one stat that we pulled was 20 to 25% of Instacart shopping activity comes from repurchasing. So this is kind of the early mover advantage. If you're jumping in there, and even if that immediate ROI wasn't that good, if you truly believed that I've got a consumable product where people are repurchasing that in 3 months or 6 months, then I can get this customer coming back over time. So that's another reason that's a little less measurable, but another reason why advertisers really like the platform.
Oh, the loyalty or the retention cost, it diminishes the customer acquisition cost over time. It's like the effective rate of customer acquisition can be, you could invest much heavier earlier on, because the payback period over time would be significantly lower than, say, any other channel where there's more competition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's and that's a conversation we hear a lot these days, especially on the web or even in email, where you're constantly paying to reacquire a customer because there's just too many options. There's a lot of ad dollars going to try to lure that customer away. This is an amazing sort of captive platform where good experiences beget the next good experience.
Wow. So there's a few complaints that brands have about the ad platform. One is you can't target by geography or retailer. And so if you're at one of the brands that we interviewed is Cliff Bar, let's say they wanted to target Albertsons, for example, in a particular geography, given whatever data they have, just as an example, they can't do that because, again, my view is Instacart's really keeping that retailer relationship sacred in a way, and retailers are ultimately losing their trade dollars and some marketing dollars that they would be getting from brands. It's being diverted to Instacart. So if you were Instacart and you allowed brands to target by retailer or geography, in some cases it's going to be the same thing because there's only so many retailers in that geography, then you're more directly stemming the flow of vendor dollars. So that's one thing where I think brands understand the logic behind that, but they would much rather know by retailer how it's all working out. So that's one of those things I don't think it's really going to change given Instacart's business model. And brands are always looking for more data, and Instacart, they're certainly pulling ahead with their development, but that's a limitation, along with the no control over inventory availability or all of that.
Is that the Amazon or the Instacart Paradox that you mentioned in the pre-show. Tell us,
Yes.
You said Instacart Paradox. It was such a fun term. Is that part of it? Explain the Instacart Paradox as you sort of mentioned earlier.
Instacart Paradox is that Instacart offers great ROI for an advertiser, and it's where so many customers are shopping. It's where all the demand is. So you want to be there, you want to be advertising, but at the same time, there's a lack of control because having the retailer at the heart of product availability, content, pricing means so much of making that purchase happen is outside of the control of the brand. So there are safeguards in place. Like if you're a brand and you're advertising, if you're a Cliff Bar and you're advertising a product and it's out of stock in some geographies, Instacart's not going to allow it to be advertised in those geographies. So they have safety rails with things like that, but it's still frustrating for a brand to put Instacart into their plan and then for it to not actually show up in California because the retailer dropped the ball or didn't have their inventory system operating properly.
Wow. Ooh, that's an interesting dilemma, because there's what happens then in those geographies, Kiri, is are there competing brands that would win the bid by default then based on inventory availability? Is that
Yep.
how it wins out? Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it could go down. So if there's a competitor to Cliff Bar, then they could be trying to conquest Cliff Bar, and if Cliff Bar is out of stock, then they could sneak in with that and conquest them there.
Interesting. So that might be an interesting strategy, is to look for opportunities where there's out of stock and go after those. A lot of opportunities to sort of sneak in and take over market share as a result of that.
Gummy vitamins, like gummies are out everywhere, all over the nation right now. Apparently, I have it on good authority.
Really?
There's a supply chain constraint around producing gummy vitamins, especially in the United States. There's something to the tune of, I think there's 3 manufacturers that produce most of the gummies in all of the United States. And by volume, and they're all constrained from the same due to the same supply chain issues. And so that's been a big fallout for the wellness industry, who is in boomtown right now, who have shifted modality over the last few years, due to all kinds of reasons, but full family wellness is really hinges a lot on gummies these days. And when you look at cannabis and CBD and a bunch of other things, like gummies are anyway. I'm saying that to say I'm curious what what you do to position your brand. If you're a smaller brand, Instacart might be a really interesting play, where the big guys would be out of stock and you have plenty sitting on someone's shelf. That would be a really interesting approach to get some brand loyalty right now. This is a this.
I
Go ahead.
I want to throw a question out to you guys because I'm interested in your take. One, as we're talking about retailers, okay, they're maybe a few years behind now, but ultimately, if we believe they're going to go out and build their own platforms or white label, etc., retailer ad networks are where you're going to make up the margin that you lose elsewhere, right? It's very profitable. Brands are, once they can see the value, they're quick to run and chase that down, just like we saw with Instacart. If the ROI is there, brands will come. So I see this future where if you're a CPG brand, you've got a dozen retailer ad networks that you suddenly now need to manage and allocate spend between. And like, it's going to get so complicated. And that's just the retailers. That's not, including marketplaces, D2C, the traditional, brick and mortar retail, whatever that looks like. So, wow, that's an interesting future to look at.
I mean, maybe Scott Wingo shouldn't have gotten to the car wash business and should have stayed on with Channel. If Channel Advisor hadn't been built, 20 years ago and built 5 years ago, I think there's a
wait. Hold on. Wait, what was your question, Kiri?
I'm sorry. I jumped in. I heard where I thought the question was going. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I mean that's pretty much it. Like, what opportunities do you agree with that? What opportunities do you see with tech to come in and solve that kind of problem?
I feel like this is a bundling and unbundling moment yet again.
Yes.
It is. Well, so it's omni-channel everywhere. I think is one of the challenges here, is that there's sort of omni-channel as it pertains to logistics. There's 2 hour, there's same day, there's 2 day, and customers expect to have it, whenever they want it, at whatever place they want it. There's omni-channel as far as like being able to acquire customers and like the way that you're invested there, and like everything you're to win in one channel requires investment in probably all of the channels, because they sort of flex and ebb and flow over time. And so having to be invested, I think when you're looking at where have agencies thrived in the past, it's consolidating talent and managing complex investments and platforms. And it was commoditized in a world where it was only Facebook or only Google were the two places that you spent the primarily had your ad spend. But this is the kind of like this moment where there's not even just a bifurcation or trifurcation. It's like the way that ad investments are being fractionalized across all, specifically for CPG, across so many different ad networks. You're going to need, for a retailer to be able to do that in-house and everyone to build that same capability is going to require an immense amount of upskilling to bring that talent in-house. And there's very few people who can actually go do that today, or a concentration of agency talent, which is probably, I think, where you and others, I think, Kiri, are well positioned to be able to make sense of it and give good advice and manage ad spend and tell people where to place their bets. That's my sense, is that there's also a technology gap in that being able to manage all of these is going to require sophisticated platforms that will help you do that. Even then, there are people that are just specialists in AdSense or AdWords. There's people that are just specialists in like very specific platforms, and we'll see that kind of specialization emerge as well. But you've probably got a number of we're very early on. We're very early on in this. In the phenomenon of a dozen retailer ad networks. I think Walgreens has one, Walmart has one.
Yeah.
Brian, you have something to say.
I feel like managing all of these is broadening the skill set to the point where I feel like potentially there could be an opportunity. I think actually your comment about Scott was on point. Actually, building technology.
Love you, Scott.
He's still the chairman. Like, I'm sure he's doing just
what
fine.
What does a chairman do? I don't even know.
I didn't mean to pick on Scott. My point was that technology could be the answer here. Like, it could be that we have to invest in like an ad management technology that is then stewarded by an agency for us, and there's agencies that come around this ad technology that allow us to go after all these deals, because it is really, really big. Like, having the expertise to manage the different types of bid systems, like the different technology, like the different interfaces, the different like nuances to each marketplace. If it's pickup, if it's shipped, if it's concierge, if it's whatever it is, like there's so many different ways to do this now. And then advertising for those different channels, for those different methodologies of interacting with your customer, all have multiple ways to advertise against them. It's too big. Like, you're going to need something to sort of rebundle.
But it's not even just...
We're back to bundling.
It's not just ad management technology. It's like ad management technology.
Right,
it's like...
Right. Exactly.
It's whatever that next level of abstraction is. Kiri, I'm curious if you have an answer for this. I want to know what you think. But in that answer, you were saying something earlier. Do you believe that brands are shifting ad spend away from in-aisle discounts in the sort of traditional model, coupon, manufacturer retail offers, that they're shifting that spend away to these other channels for acquisition like Instacart? Or is this purely like sort of net new investment? And I'm curious what you think about those.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I don't have a super clear answer on that. I'd say this time last year, yes. Like all, if you could yank those dollars out of the stores, then you were spending them online. But now I'm not so sure. It might be net new. Hard to say.
What's your answer to this this evolving sort of complexity of ad networks question?
Yeah, I think you're right. And Brian's point, bundling and unbundling, that's what a business cycle is. So I think that we're going to definitely get those aggregated solutions. And I see another huge opportunity for technology and just better analytics. There's a few providers out there who some have their roots in traditional retail shelf analytics, and there's some new digital shelf analytics providers. We need more of them, and we need them to continue to level up the game, because this particularly, like, there's systemic issues in why retailers can't have up-to-date store level inventory counts. And those need to be addressed before retailers can solve any new e-commerce problems. It's just that there's a lot of companies behind, a lot of manufacturers are behind in being able to do anything remotely D2C because they can't ship eaches still. So there's a lot of remediation that needs to happen for retailers and a lot of brands as well. And this is, helping to push things forward a little bit faster. We will need technology to solve those problems. I like what you said about agencies. I'm an agency girl. So I think that as much as technology can help things, you always need that the strategy and the context of bringing, lots of different pieces from different clients and different channels and categories together to figure out what's the right plan. That is not something that you can outsource to AI. So, yeah, there's room to grow in this ecosystem. That's for sure.
Yeah, this. As always, we have more things to talk about than time to accomplish it in. But there was somebody who tweeted recently, and I'd love to give them a shout out, but I can't remember who it was, so apologies. But it was just think about how early we are in these new like modalities of the way that we shop. We're in its infancy. Imagine thinking you were late to the internet in 2001 or 2002. Because there was a lot of movement early on. I mean, Amazon was founded in 95 or 94, something crazy. Like the thinking you're late then, and look at how much growth and has happened since. It's thinking you're late to Instacart now is you're not. You're not. And I think that the Instacart is proving out a category where there will only be more growth. And if the future comes to pass where there's, multiple of these types of platforms that are all competing for the customer, it means that more customers are adopting that as a preferred channel to shop, which means there's more opportunity for all of us to find new customers. That can be a virtuous cycle. Kiri, where do we go get the book?
You can find Instacart for CMOs on Amazon.
Wow.
Not Instacart as far as I know. But if you just go to Amazon and search for Instacart for CMOs, you'll be able to find it. It's in Kindle and paperback. And I wrote that book with Stefan Jordev, who's the Director of Marketplace Strategy and Insights at Bobsled Marketing. So definitely a joint effort there.
Awesome.
It's amazing.
Always love having you on the show, Kiri, and let's have you back before you write another book. I just love having you.
It'll be a while. Thank you so much, guys. Great to speak with you and talk about the future of Instacart and commerce.
Yeah, thank you. And if you want to go get some Daggy glasses for yourself, we'll post up a link in the show notes. You can find that at futurecommerce.fm. And hey, we put out 2 shows every week. There's Future Commerce, which you're listening to right now, comes out 7 a.m. every Friday. There's also Stairway to CEO, which drops every Tuesday with the venerable Lee Green, who's absolutely brilliant, and it helps unpack what makes leaders tick and why in the world would they want to to create and build some really brilliant companies. Great show there. You can find all of that and never miss a single episode or any content that we produce. And you can find that at futurecommerce.fm. And why don't you subscribe at futurecommerce.fm/subscribe. That'll get you up to date on all the things that we're doing in the world of commerce. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.